Okay, so in the post-classical era, some Scandinavian fur traders went over to Central Asia.
They followed Eastern Orthodox Christianity.
And then they founded Kiev.
Before the Mongols, life in Kiev was pretty nice.
They borrowed like everything from Byzantine Empire, like architecture, legal codification, religion.
And then came the Mongols, which changed everything.
After the Mongol invasion, the Kievs had a tribute system with the Mongols.
In this system, the Russians paid the Mongols money so they wouldn't attack them.
The Mongol Khanate that ruled over Russia was the Golden Horde.
During the early modern era in Russia, the Tsars rose to power and created the Third Rome, centered in Moscow.
Early czars mostly focused on keeping power and expansion.
One of the most influential early Tsars was Ivan the Terrible.
So after Ivan the Terrible, Peter and Catherine the Great continued expansion south and eastward, and that's where settlers called the Cossacks set up camp.
Tsars hired secret police like me to control the serfs.
Serfs like me were treated very poorly and almost like slaves.
Okay, so Peter and Catherine the Great did a lot of borrowing from Europe, including manufacturing, naval technology, and education.
But they decided not to take any political ideas from Europe so that they could gain power.
During Pugachev's revolt, serfs like me uprose against the government. But it failed. At the end of this era, Russia's economy was mostly agricultural.
And also at the end of this era, there was still no merchant class or artisan class in Russia.
At the beginning of the industrial era, serfdom was abolished.
And also during the industrial era, the industrialization of Russia was state-led.
Russia benefited from a large population and abundance of natural resources.
Because of the political oppression in Russia, groups like the intelligentsia started to form. These groups had their own political ideas and opposed the Russian government.
So in the industrial era, there was this vicious cycle, which was with repeated terrorism, the government would respond with even tighter laws. And thus it would continue with more terrorism and tighter laws.
During World War I, Russia suffered heavy casualties.
Defy comrades!
During World War I, Russians stopped fighting due to internal problems like the Bolshevik Revolution.
So in 1917, the Bolsheviks took power and placed a communist Soviet government headed by Lenin. So Stalin succeeded Lenin as leader of Russia, and he supported the use of secret police and nationalism.
Russia number one!
Even during the modern era, even though that Russia had many agricultural resources, many of the people died due to famine because of the government's use of collectivization. Collectivization is where the government controls how the farmers, what they farm and how they farm, and then set their own prices. And this led to many people not being able to get food.
In order to industrialize, the USSR used ambitious 5-year plans with specific goals to effectively and quickly industrialize, like this here log splitter.
During World War II, Germany and Russia created a non-aggression pact.
But in 1941, Nazis disagreed with the pact and invaded Russia.
After the Nazi aggression, the Russians pushed the Nazis back to Germany.
After the defeat of the Nazis in World War II, the Soviet Union gained control in East Berlin and East Germany and many other Eastern European countries. They imposed a communist government on all the places there.
When the Allies were dividing Germany at the Potsdam Conference, it created tension between the Soviet Union.
This started the Cold War. So during the Cold War, the US and its allies made NATO, and as a response, the Soviet Union created the Warsaw Pact.
The conflict between these two organizations led to proxy wars and hot wars in places such as Korea and Vietnam, which eventually led them to split into communist and capitalist countries.
In 1991, the USSR fell from power.
Due to political unrest in Russia, and political corruption, famine, and the USSR can no longer catch up with the consumerism of the US and Europe.
Alright, so at the end of our story, Putin gained power in Russia with a new government, but they continue to try and gain control over former satellite states and continue to have strong leaders.
Going off what has been said about your boy, Vladimir Putin, he has done quite a lot with his political power in Russia. He has only rigged a couple elections here and there, invaded a couple previously owned territories such as Ukraine, and executed only a few of his own citizens for his own personal gain. On the other hand, he has put a lot of time and effort into counterterrorism and keeping uprisings quiet within his own country. He poisoned a retired security member for speaking out against him, for God's sake. He currently dominates Russian politics and has almost turned Russia into a dictatorship. Thanks, Putin.